Open the Windows 11 Settings app and try to permanently disable automatic updates on a Home Edition system. Try to move the taskbar to the side of your screen. Try to prevent OneDrive from repeatedly suggesting you enable folder backup. Try to stop Windows from collecting diagnostic data entirely, not just reducing it to the minimum level, but stopping it completely. Try to set a third-party browser as your default, without Windows prompting you to reconsider and give Edge another chance. If you have attempted any of these actions recently, you have likely encountered a common pattern. The option is not there, or it is hidden so deeply behind registry edits and group policy configurations that most users will never find it, or it exists temporarily until the next update resets your preferences back to Microsoft's defaults. This is not accidental. This is not oversight. This is design. A deliberate, strategic architecture that reflects a fundamental transformation in Microsoft's philosophies about what an operating system should be and who should ultimately control it. For decades, Windows was the platform of choice precisely because it gave users control. You purchased the software, you installed it on your hardware, and you configured it to match your workflow, your preferences, your needs. The system adapted to you, but Windows 11 increasingly inverts that relationship. The system has preferences. It has security requirements. It has service integrations and ecosystem assumptions that it will enforce regardless of whether you explicitly chose them. And the question facing every Windows user today is whether this transformation represents necessary evolution, a response to legitimate modern challenges, or whether it represents the quiet dismantling of the very concept that made personal computing personal in the first place. To understand what has been lost, you must first understand what Windows was, not just as software, but as a philosophy. From Windows 95 through Windows 7, the operating system was built on the premise that the user, particularly the user with administrative privileges, had ultimate authority over the machine. This was not just a technical implementation detail. It was the foundational principle that differentiated personal computers from mainframes, terminals, and locked-down appliances. You could disable any service you deemed unnecessary. You could uninstall system components, even critical ones, though doing so might break functionality. You could defer or refuse updates indefinitely. You could modify virtually every aspect of the interface, from color schemes to the entire shell replacement. The Windows registry, introduced with Windows 95 and refined through subsequent versions, was the ultimate expression of this philosophy. The registry is a hierarchical database containing thousands of configuration parameters that control every aspect of system behavior. Most users never touched it, relying instead on the graphical settings panels. But for power users, IT professionals, and enthusiasts, the registry was a playground of possibility. You could disable telemetry that had no official toggle. You could modify hidden interface behaviors. You could optimize performance by disabling background services. You could fundamentally reshape how Windows operated. Microsoft documented some registry tweaks officially, but a vast ecosystem of third-party resources, websites, forums, magazines, cataloged thousands more. This culture of user modification extended to updates. Windows XP allowed you to configure Windows Update to notify you of available updates, but take no action without explicit approval. You could review each update individually, reading the knowledge base articles, and decide which to install and which to skip. You could disable Windows Update entirely if you chose, though this was inadvisable for security. But the point is, you could. The system respected your decision, even if it was a poor one. Windows 7 refined this model with more granular controls. You could hide specific updates that cause problems on your hardware. You could separate important updates from optional ones. You could configure automatic downloads but manual installation approval. Privacy controls were straightforward and limited because there was relatively little data collection. Windows XP and Windows 7 had Customer Experience Improvement Program, which was entirely optional and clearly labeled. Disabling it meant no usage data was sent to Microsoft, period. The operating system did not phone home constantly. It did not require internet connectivity for core functionality. It did not assume you wanted cloud integration. Customization options were extensive. You could resize the taskbar, move it to any screen edge, show or hide labels for buttons, group similar items, or display them individually. The Start menu was configurable with custom folders, removed items, and third-party replacements. Desktop icons could be arranged freely, sized individually, and displayed with custom spacing. The control panel provided access to every system setting imaginable, organized in detailed categories with advanced options clearly accessible. This level of control attracted power users, developers, and IT professionals who needed Windows to behave precisely according to their requirements. It also created a culture where tinkering, optimizing, and customizing your system was part of the PC enthusiast experience. Entire communities formed around sharing tweaks, optimizations, and custom configurations. The implicit social contract was clear. You purchased Windows. Microsoft provided the foundation. But what you built on that foundation was entirely your decision. Windows 11 represents the culmination of a gradual philosophical shift that began with Windows 8 and accelerated through Windows 10. Microsoft, observing the success of Apple's tightly integrated ecosystem and the stability gains from managed platforms, began systematically reducing user control in favor of automated, secure, consistent defaults. The most visible manifestation is the mandatory nature of updates. Windows 11 Home Edition provides no mechanism to permanently disable Windows Update. You can pause updates for up to 5 weeks. You can set active hours to control when automatic restarts occur. But you cannot stop the system from eventually installing every update Microsoft releases. The decision of when to patch your system, which updates are critical, and when to apply them has been removed from user control. Microsoft account integration has become nearly inescapable. Setting up Windows 11 Home requires signing in with a Microsoft account. The option to create a local offline account has been systematically hidden and progressively removed through updates that close workarounds. The operating system wants your identity tied to Microsoft's cloud infrastructure because that identity is the foundation for everything else. OneDrive, folder synchronization, settings, synchronization, Microsoft Store purchases, Copilot AI integration, BitLocker recovery key escrow. Your computing experience is no longer anonymous or local. It is identified, tracked, and tied to a corporate account system. Telemetry has evolved from optional to mandatory. Even at the most restrictive diagnostic data setting, Windows 11 continues transmitting usage information, error reports, and system telemetry to Microsoft. The official justification is that this data, collected in aggregate and anonymized, allows Microsoft to identify compatibility issues, detect emerging malware patterns, and improve system stability. But users cannot verify what is being sent. They cannot inspect the data in transit. They must trust Microsoft's privacy policy and technical documentation. And for users who fundamentally do not trust any form of remote data collection, Windows 11 offers no legitimate opt-out that actually stops transmission. Cloud integration assumptions permeate the entire operating system architecture. Windows Search now includes web results by default, sending your local file search queries to Bing. The Photos app integrates cloud editing features that require internet connectivity. The new Widgets panel pulls personalized news and weather from Microsoft's servers. Copilot, the AI assistant, processes queries through cloud-based language models. The architecture assumes persistent internet connectivity and treats offline operation as a degraded state rather than a normal mode. Customization options have been systematically removed or restricted. The Windows 11 taskbar cannot be moved to the top or sides of the screen through any official interface. It is locked to the bottom. You cannot resize it. You cannot restore the classic right-click context menu without registry modification. The Start menu layout is fixed, with limited customization compared to Windows 10. The control panel, which provided detailed access to system settings for decades, is being actively deprecated. Settings are migrating to the modern Settings app, which offers cleaner design but significantly fewer advanced options. Features that power users relied upon are either hidden behind group policy settings available only in Pro editions or removed entirely. Default application handling has become contentious and manipulative. If you install Firefox or Chrome and set it as your default browser, Windows continues displaying prompts suggesting you try Microsoft Edge. Clicking certain system links opens Edge regardless of your default. Browser setting. The Settings app makes switching to Edge a single click, but requires navigating through multiple screens to change to a different browser. Microsoft argues this improves user experience by ensuring users make informed choices, but critics accurately characterize it as anti-competitive leveraging of the operating system's privileged position. Security features, while genuinely beneficial, also reduce user control. Secure Boot prevents unsigned operating systems from loading, making dual booting with some Linux distributions more difficult. The TPM requirement and automatic BitLocker encryption can cause lockouts if you modify hardware or attempt certain system changes. Windows Defender cannot be permanently disabled through official means, only temporarily suspended. These restrictions serve legitimate security purposes, but they also mean users cannot configure their systems in ways Microsoft has deemed unsafe, even if the user understands and accepts the risks. The frustration expressed by Windows 11 users centers on specific, tangible loss of functionality that previous versions provided. Forced updates are the most common complaint. Users report critical work being interrupted by automatic restarts. Creative professionals lose hours of work when the system reboots during a rendering job. Gamers experience forced restarts during online sessions. The Active Hours feature is supposed to prevent this, but it has a maximum 12-hour window in Home Edition and 18 hours in Pro, which does not accommodate users with irregular schedules or those who use their computers at varying times. The updates themselves sometimes reset user preferences. Privacy settings that were disabled get re-enabled after feature updates. Default applications revert to Microsoft's options. Taskbar configurations change. Users spend time carefully configuring their system to their preferences, only to have a quarterly feature update undo that work. This creates exhausting vigilance, where every update becomes a potential ambush requiring verification that nothing was changed without consent. Default application persistence failures create daily annoyance. After setting Firefox as the default browser, certain Windows components still open Edge. The News widget opens Edge. Some settings links open Edge. Cortana results open Edge. Microsoft argues these are integrated system features designed specifically for Edge, but users experience it as the system ignoring their explicitly stated preference. The behavior feels disrespectful, as if the operating system knows better than the user what browser they should use. Limited customization generates frustration among users who define their workflow around specific interface configurations. Moving the taskbar to the side of a vertical monitor is impossible in Windows 11 without third-party tools. Users who relied on this configuration for years are forced to adapt to Microsoft's singular vision of how a taskbar should behave. The simplified context menu hides options that advanced users access regularly, requiring an extra click to reach frequently used functions. These changes may seem minor individually, but collectively they communicate that Microsoft values aesthetic consistency and simplified design over user preference and workflow efficiency. Security restrictions, while justifiable, feel like control removal to users who understand their implications. The inability to dual boot certain Linux distributions without disabling secure boot means choosing between modern Windows security and operating system flexibility. The automatic activation of BitLocker with Cloud Key Escrow means your encryption keys exist on Microsoft servers, subject to their security practices and legal obligations. Users who prefer local-only key storage must actively disable BitLocker and accept warnings about reduced security. Online account dependencies create anxiety about access continuity. If your Microsoft account is compromised, locked due to suspicious activity, or inaccessible because you lost access to the associated email address, your ability to log into your computer becomes complicated. While recovery options exist, they introduce external dependencies that did not exist with purely local accounts. Some users report account lockouts, requiring identity verification processes that take days, during which their computer is essentially unusable. It is crucial to separate legitimate grievances from exaggerated online claims. Some users assert that Windows 11 is spyware, that Microsoft is reading your files, or that updates intentionally break systems. These claims are not supported by credible evidence. What is verifiable is that Windows 11 has reduced user control in specific, measurable ways compared to previous versions, and that these reductions serve Microsoft's strategic goals of security standardization, ecosystem integration, and support simplification, sometimes at the expense of user autonomy. From Microsoft's institutional perspective, the restrictions that frustrate power users are necessary responses to the practical realities of supporting over 1 billion Windows devices in an environment of sophisticated, persistent cyber threats. The decision to enforce automatic updates is rooted in hard data about user behavior. When updates were optional, vast numbers of users deferred them indefinitely. Security researchers would discover and responsibly disclose critical vulnerabilities. Microsoft would release patches, and months later, hundreds of millions of systems remained unpatched, vulnerable, and actively being exploited by malware, ransomware, and botnet operators. These unpatched systems are not just individual problems, they are collective threats. A compromised home PC becomes part of a botnet used for DDoS attacks against critical infrastructure. It sends spam. It hosts phishing sites. It participates in cryptocurrency mining operations. The externalities of poor patch discipline affect everyone. By enforcing updates, Microsoft is attempting to raise the minimum security baseline for the entire ecosystem. This is conceptually similar to public health measures, like vaccination requirements. Individual autonomy is restricted to protect collective security. The push toward Microsoft accounts and cloud integration is similarly motivated by real benefits that serve most users well. Cloud synchronized settings mean you can set up a new laptop and have your wallpaper, browser favorites, and application preferences appear automatically. OneDrive backup means hardware failure does not result in permanent data loss. Windows. Hello biometric authentication tied to cloud identity enables passwordless login with robust security. For the majority of Windows users, who are not IT professionals or privacy advocates, but ordinary people using computers as tools to accomplish other goals, these features genuinely improve the experience. Telemetry data, despite the controversy, provides Microsoft with information that is extremely difficult to obtain otherwise. Aggregate crash data reveals which hardware configurations are unstable. Driver telemetry identifies problematic drivers before they reach widespread deployment. Feature usage data informs development priorities, showing which features are heavily used and which are ignored. Without this data, Microsoft is flying blind, making decisions based on assumptions rather than evidence. The privacy cost is real, but so is the development benefit. The deprecation of advanced customization options reflects a strategic decision to optimize for the majority rather than the minority. Most Windows users never move the taskbar. They never edit the registry. They never create custom start menu configurations. For these users, a simpler, more consistent interface reduces cognitive load and support burden. By removing customization that few people use, Microsoft can focus development resources on features that benefit the broader user base. Power users who need those customizations can use third-party tools or pro enterprise editions with group policy access. From a support economics perspective, reducing configuration variability dramatically simplifies troubleshooting. When every system can be configured differently, support requests require extensive diagnosis to determine the system state before solutions can be proposed. When configurations are standardized, common problems have standard solutions. This reduces support costs and improves resolution rates. For an organization supporting 1 billion devices, this is not trivial efficiency. It is operational necessity. Microsoft can also reasonably argue that security restrictions like secure boot and TPM requirements are industry standard best practices, not Microsoft-specific overreach. These technologies were developed collaboratively through industry standards bodies. They are implemented across platforms. Apple's Macs use similar secure boot processes. Chrome OS enforces verified boot. The entire industry is moving toward hardware-rooted trust chains because software-only security has proven insufficient against modern threats. The trajectory Windows 11 represents is not unique to Microsoft. It is the natural evolution of computing platforms in an era defined by cloud services, artificial intelligence, and persistent security threats. The standalone, offline, infinitely configurable personal computer that defined the industry from 1980 to 2010 is being systematically replaced by connected, managed, ecosystem-integrated platforms where user control is deliberately limited in exchange for security, convenience, and seamless service integration. Apple demonstrated that this model can be extraordinarily successful. The iPhone is a locked platform where users cannot install arbitrary software, cannot access system files, cannot modify core behaviors. Yet it is beloved by hundreds of millions of users precisely because it works reliably, securely, and consistently. The trade-off of control for reliability is one most consumers willingly accept. Microsoft is attempting to bring this philosophy to Windows, recognizing that the traditional PC model's flexibility, while valuable to enthusiasts, creates support nightmares and security vulnerabilities. Cloud-first operating systems like Chrome OS take this even further. A Chromebook assumes all your data lives in the cloud, all your applications are web-based, and the local device is a disposable terminal. This model is successful in education and enterprise environments because it simplifies management and eliminates many categories of support issues. Windows is not yet this extreme, but the direction is clear. OneDrive integration, cloud clipboard, setting sync, and AI features all push toward a future where the local device is a cache and interface for cloud-resident data and services. AI-managed systems represent the next frontier. Future operating systems may use machine learning to predict what applications you will need, what files should be cached locally versus offloaded to cloud, when updates should install based on your usage patterns, and how to optimize system resources automatically. This AI-driven management promises efficiency and convenience, but further reduces user agency. When algorithms make decisions, users lose transparency into why things happen and control over outcomes. Identity-based computing is already here. Your computing experience is increasingly tied to your cloud identity rather than the specific hardware you're using. Sign into any Windows 11 PC with your Microsoft account, and your environment materializes. Your files, your apps, your settings. The device itself becomes irrelevant. This enables remarkable flexibility, but also creates dependency. Your access to your digital life depends on maintaining good standing with the account provider and their services remaining operational. The tension between convenience and autonomy is the central question of modern computing. Convenience demands automation, standardization, and centralized management. Autonomy demands transparency, configurability, and user control. These are fundamentally opposed priorities. You cannot have both maximum convenience and maximum autonomy. Every automated decision the system makes is a decision the user does not make. Every restriction that improves security is a restriction on user freedom. The gradual reduction of user control in Windows 11 is not a conspiracy, a mistake, or temporary phase that will reverse with user feedback. It is the logical endpoint of a decades-long evolution in how the technology industry conceptualizes the relationship between users and platforms. The personal computer began as a blank slate, a general-purpose machine that executed whatever instructions the owner provided. That model created tremendous innovation, flexibility, and user empowerment. But it also created security nightmares, support complexity and fragmentation that made delivering modern cloud-connected services nearly impossible. Windows 11 represents Microsoft's bet that most users, perhaps the vast majority, will accept reduced control in exchange for improved security, reliable service integration, and simplified operation. And the evidence suggests they are correct. Despite vocal complaints from enthusiast communities, Windows 11 adoption has proceeded steadily. Most users are not clamoring for registry access or demanding local accounts. They are using their computers to browse the web, edit documents, watch videos, and play games, and Windows 11 does all of that reliably. But the cost of this transformation is that computing, at least within the Windows ecosystem, is no longer truly personal in the original sense. The machine on your desk does not answer solely to you. It answers to Microsoft's security policies, Microsoft's ecosystem requirements, Microsoft's vision of how computing should work. Your role has shifted from administrator with absolute authority to user with permitted actions. The system makes decisions about updates, telemetry, default applications, and acceptable configurations. You can influence these decisions within defined boundaries, but you cannot override them without extraordinary technical effort or accepting unsupported configurations. The debate over Windows 11's restrictions is ultimately a proxy for a much larger question about the future of technology and human agency. As systems become more complex, more connected, and more automated, the locus of control inevitably shifts from individual users to the platform operators who design and maintain those systems. This shift delivers genuine benefits: better security, more reliability, easier access to powerful services. But it also demands trust. Trust that the platform operator has your interests at heart. Trust that their priorities align with yours. Trust that they will wield their power responsibly. And perhaps the most unsettling realization is that this transformation is irreversible. We are not returning to the open, infinitely configurable, user-controlled computing of the past. That era is over. The future belongs to managed platforms, AI-driven automation, and cloud-connected ecosystems. The only remaining question is whether there will be space, even if only at the margins, for users who reject this model. Whether alternatives like Linux will remain viable for those who prioritize control over convenience, or whether the economics and network effects of the dominant platforms will eventually crowd out all alternatives, leaving users with a binary choice: accept the managed ecosystem on the platform's terms, or abandon computing altogether. Because the PC, the revolutionary tool that gave individuals unprecedented power over information and creativity, is quietly transforming into something different. Not a tool that serves the user, but a platform that serves the ecosystem. And the user's role in that ecosystem is no longer master, but participant. Not controller, but consumer. Not owner, but tenant. And the question we must answer, individually and collectively, is whether we will accept that transformation, or whether we will demand that our computers, the devices we purchase with our money and use for our work and our lives, ultimately belong to us.